Aftab never expected much from the quiet morning when the mail truck rolled down his street. Most days it brought nothing more than bills or ads, but today a thick, official-looking envelope sat on top of the stack. The return address read, Henderson and Crow, Attorneys at Law, Kentucky. He frowned. He didn't know anyone in Kentucky. Inside was a formal inheritance notice. As he read, his heartbeat quickened. His late uncle, someone he remembered only from childhood stories, had passed away and left him 1,000 acres of land in rural Kentucky. Not just woodlands or empty fields, but land with developments built right on top of it, including a complete residential community. Confused, Aftab pulled up satellite maps on his phone. His eyes widened. Roads, houses, a park, even a community center, all sitting within the property boundaries highlighted in bright yellow. He scanned the documents again, looking for a catch. But the deed was valid. The surveys were stamped, the coordinates matched perfectly. His uncle's land stretched across rolling hills and forest lines, except it wasn't empty anymore. A modern HOA neighborhood, designed with perfect symmetry and expensive landscaping, had been constructed directly inside it. Curiosity pushed him to see it in person. After a long drive, he reached the edge of the property and stepped out. The air was calm, the land wide and quiet. As he walked along the gravel path, the HOA sign came into view, Maple Ridge Community, established 2003. The sign stood proudly, but now it meant something entirely different. Everything behind it, homes, fences, playgrounds, sat on his land. Aftab stood still, processing the reality. The HOA had no idea. He folded the deed carefully, a strange mix of disbelief and responsibility settling over him. Something significant was about to begin. Aftab arrived at the HOA meeting, trying to appear as just another interested community member. The room was filled with homeowners arguing over trivial things, paint colors, lawn heights, and whether the clubhouse could host late-night events. The board president, Mrs. Whitmore, presided over the meeting with a sense of superiority, her voice sharp and commanding. No one seemed to notice Aftab as he quietly took a seat in the back. As the discussion wound down, he raised his hand. "Excuse me," he said calmly. "I believe I'm the owner of the land this community sits on." Laughter erupted at first, subtle at first, then louder. People whispered to each other, thinking it was a joke. Mrs. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. "This is a residents-only meeting," she said, brushing him off. "We don't discuss legal matters with outsiders." Aftab smiled, keeping his tone polite. "I'm not an outsider," he replied. Slowly, he reached into his bag and laid a thick folder on the table. The room fell silent. He opened it to reveal the official deed, surveys, and county records, each stamped and verified. He pointed to the highlighted property lines. Every home, every street, every lot in the community was on his land. The whispers grew louder. A homeowner muttered, "That can't be right, Mrs. Whitmore." Tried to dismiss it as a clerical error, but her confident mask was cracking. Aftab didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "I came here to ensure this matter is addressed fairly and legally. I'm open to discussion, but I expect acknowledgement of the facts." For the first time, the board members looked uncertain. Their usual authority was gone. The room felt heavy with tension, and the homeowners realized that everything they had assumed about ownership might be false. Aftab quietly packed up his documents and left the room, leaving them to wrestle with a truth that no one had anticipated: the entire HOA had been built on land that didn't belong to them. The next morning, the HOA board arrived at Aftab's temporary cabin on the edge of the property. Nervous glances and hurried whispers filled the air as Mrs. Whitmore led the group, her usual confidence slightly shaken. They had called the meeting under the guise of clarifying ownership, but the tension was thick. They knew, deep down, that the documents Aftab presented yesterday were real. Aftab greeted them calmly. He didn't shout, didn't accuse. Instead, he offered them seats on the rough wooden benches outside his cabin, letting the crisp Kentucky air carry the weight of the situation. I understand this is a lot to process, he said evenly. But it's important we talk honestly about the land. The board members fidgeted, unsure where to begin. Mr. Thompson, a longtime resident, spoke first. Look, we're willing to work something out. Maybe a lease, a trade, anything. Just don't, kick anyone out. Aftab nodded slowly. I'm not here to make enemies. I want fairness, not conflict. You've built your lives here, and I respect that. But respect goes both ways. The HOA has been operating as if it owned this land for years, without any legal rights. That changes today. Mrs. Whitmore, face tight with anger, interjected. But we've existed here for decades. By law, we should. By law, Aftab interrupted gently, the law is clear. This is my property. You have options. Formal agreements, lease arrangements, or a negotiated settlement. But pretending ownership doesn't make it true. The room went quiet. Board members exchanged uneasy looks, realizing that the balance of power had shifted. They had always held authority over residents, but now, that control rested in Aftab's hands. He didn't need to threaten, they already knew the truth. As the board left, their expressions a mix of fear, frustration, and reluctant respect, Aftab stood silently on the porch, watching the community he now legally controlled come to terms with the fact that everything had changed. Aftab drove into the quiet town courthouse parking lot, a folder of documents resting on his lap. The local real estate attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Ms. Callahan, greeted him with a mix of curiosity and professional caution. After introductions, they sat at a polished wooden table, spreading out old surveys, legal deeds, and county zoning paperwork. Let's go through this carefully, Ms. Callahan said. Her pen hovered over the documents as she examined each map and signature. From what I can see, everything matches. Your uncle's inheritance is valid. These homes, roads, even the park, they were built without any legal claim from the HOA. Aftab felt a wave of disbelief. So, they've been living here all this time, thinking it's theirs, and it's actually mine. That's exactly what it looks like, Ms. Callahan confirmed. By law, you are the rightful owner. The HOA has no deeds, no purchase history, nothing. She leaned back, steepling her fingers. You have several options. You could require the homeowners to negotiate new ownership agreements, charge lease fees, or even sell off the lots individually. You could enforce your rights entirely, but that could get messy. Aftab absorbed the information carefully. He wasn't interested in chaos or revenge. He wanted control and fairness, not a neighborhood uproar. So, if I want, I can essentially flip the balance of power without violating anyone's home. He asked. Yes, Ms. Callahan said. You hold all the cards. The law is clear. Any agreements moving forward must go through you. The reality sank in. For decades, the HOA had run the community as if it were theirs, but now the legal truth gave Aftab the authority and responsibility. He could protect the residents while finally ensuring the HOA could no longer act unchecked. As he left the office, folder in hand, Aftab felt a quiet sense of resolve. He wasn't just an heir to land, he was now the arbiter of the entire community's future, and every decision from here on would reflect his principles. Aftab stood on the small hill overlooking the community, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the neatly manicured lawns. In his hands was a stack of official notices, each printed clearly, legally verified, and addressed to every household. The paper detailed the reality. He was the lawful owner of the land, the HOA had no deeds or authority over the property, and while no one would be evicted, any future agreements must go through him. He posted one notice on the community center bulletin board, then walked to the mailbox area, slipping copies into every box. Within minutes, the first neighbors appeared, reading the letters with wide eyes and shocked expressions. Conversations erupted instantly, hushed whispers turning into anxious debates. Mrs. Whitmore, the board president, arrived last, clutching her own copy, her carefully maintained composure starting to crumble. This can't be real, she exclaimed, glancing around at the growing crowd. "We've been here for 20 years. Aftab stepped forward calmly. "I understand this is surprising. No one is being asked to leave. My goal is fairness and respect. The days of unilateral HOA control are over. From now on, every lot, every street, every agreement must involve me." Residents looked between him and the board members, tension heavy in the air. Some were angry, some worried, some quietly relieved that their homes were safe, if handled correctly. The power dynamic had shifted entirely. The board could no longer enforce rules without his consent. As evening approached, the neighborhood gathered in small clusters, debating and questioning, while Aftab remained on the hill, observing silently. The balance had flipped. What had once been a small, insular HOA-run community now faced a new reality. Their future lay in the hands of the rightful landowner. Aftab allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. He wasn't here to punish anyone, he was here to restore order, fairness, and the respect that had long been missing. And for the first time in decades, the HOA, and the residents, had no choice but to acknowledge the truth.